Welcome to the NitWits, a weekly roundtable discussion on the Penn State Nittany Lions. Our panel features a longtime Penn State media and NitWits tag team, Neil Rudell of the Altoona Mirror and Mark Brennan of Lions 247 with Fight on State. The NitWits are hosted by WTAJ Sports Director Peter Terpstra, and each week we welcome a former Nittany Lion as our special guest analyst. The NitWits are brought to you by Irwin Financial, Raymond James, an independent firm and a firm foundation for your financial future. By Coldwell Banker, no one will work harder to sell your home. By Courtesy Motor Sales of Altoona, where courtesy means a great deal. By The Allegro, where fine cuisine is a way of life. By Health South, your rehab choice. Health South Altoona, ask for us by name. By Monarch Cleaners, for all your dry cleaning, uniform, and mat rentals. By Reed and Solaney Orthodontics. Doctors Reed and Solaney provide orthodontics for children and adults. By W.S. Lee & Sons, your local food distributor. Go Penn State. By Allegheny Street Cigar. Allegheny Street Cigar, Blair County's only cigar lounge. By McAleer's Plumbing, specializing in plumbing, heating, and air conditioning, serving our community since 1886. By Shields Awards and the Sports Shop. We have a fantastic selection of awards, apparel, and memorabilia at great prices. By Freedom RV. Get ready to tailgate this Penn State football season with Freedom RV Rentals. By Jethro's, serving ribs, steaks, Italian specialties, and the famous Prospector Salad since 1983. Takeouts, delivery, and catering. By Lucky's Beer Distributor. Let Lucky's Beer get you ready for PSU game day. By Remax Results Realty Group. Committed to a culture of professionalism, productivity, and exceptional service. By EasyToUse.com. Your Yellow Pages connection in print and online. By Lions 247 with Fight on State, your online home for Penn State football and recruiting coverage. And by the Altoona Mirror, featuring Penn State Game Day every Friday and Penn State Extra every Sunday.
Welcome to Nittany Nation Overtime.
All right, welcome to Nittany Nation Overtime. I'm Jack Washer filling in for Peter Terpstra, and as always, I'm joined by the Nitwits, Mark Brennan, Neil Rudell, and former Penn State defensive end and all Big Ten first team, Justin Kirpakis. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
We've been working on Justin for a couple of years. So
we finally got him. So
glad to be here.
Yeah. All right. Penn State wraps up non-conference play, convincingly beating Kent State 63-10. I ask you, Neil Rudell, did you see enough from Penn State in non-conference to feel confident going into conference play?
Oh, yeah, I think so. I mean, I think they've clearly made a lot of improvement from the first game. When you look at the last 8 quarters, especially defensively, they've really only allowed 2 scores. Yesterday, made 1 big play. So, yeah, I mean, clearly they still have a lot of things that I think that they need to iron out, and against better competition, it would be more problematic than they were yesterday, but I think they are trending in the right direction for sure.
Yeah, if they were going to have a tight game, in terms of what you're talking about, Jack, going into the conference, the best time to have that would be at the start of non-conference play, especially with this Friday night game coming up next week. This way, they were able to blow out a team, play a bunch of young players in the fourth quarter, get your starters out of there. They're losing a day of practice this week, and Justin, I'm sure you could speak to that. You take that week of practice out, now all of a sudden that extra quarter these guys got to take a little bit of a rest, and then the young guys got to play. That's a big deal going into conference play, isn't it?
Absolutely. And what they had the ability to do is getting those young guys in, and even the guys that have been around. I mean, the most improvement you'll ever see on a football team is from the first to second game. And I'd say that we saw a pretty big jump. And then the third game continue on. You had the guys take a break in the fourth quarter, young guys get reps. There was some apprehension, it felt like, in the first couple games. I think that's probably been weeded out, and then be able to go into Friday fresh and ready.
What I think is that a part that's not talked about this team enough is the return game with KJ Hamler, DeAndre Tompkins. We saw that in the Pitt game, and then yesterday, even though there wasn't a return for a touchdown, Penn State had a lot of short fields, and I think that's going to be a very dangerous weapon for them come Big Ten play.
Yeah, well, you're seeing the kind of speed that they've recruited over the past few years. Obviously, Tompkins was part of James Franklin's first recruiting class here, but to get some of these other kids, I mean, KJ Hamler is just electric. And, I actually said last week that there are times that Hamler reminds you of Saquon Barkley. And the reason I say that is not because he's a big bruising runner, but Saquon Barkley was super fast, but he was functionally fast on a football field. When you see some of the stuff that Hamler is able to do, making people miss and then getting back up to full speed, again, I'm not saying he's the next Saquon Barkley, but look at some of these moves and what he does just to make people miss. Unbelievable. And that's paying off from the speed that they've had. Listen, a few years ago they had Koa Farmer returning kicks. You had Nick Scott returning kicks. Now all of a sudden you have these, especially a guy like Hamler, just unbelievable what he's able to do.
Koa Farmer's in the midst of his 7th season. The thing I liked yesterday was DeAndre Hopkins, because he's a kid that's
Hopkins,
Hopkins, yeah.
It's more about his fantasy team right now.
We were talking about Bill O'Brien earlier, but Tompkins had struggled the first couple games a little bit, and he found his stride yesterday. 100 yards in receptions, beautiful touchdown pass in the end zone, key part of the return game, and I think they're going to need him. I think he has a good track record with them, and to have a veteran senior leader, particularly while they work this out with Juwan Johnson, to see when he is going to really start to fit into the offense.
Trace McSorley continues to impress. He may not have the gaudy numbers, but Justin, watching him over the last couple of years, what sticks out about Trace to you?
He's a competitor. Okay, so he doesn't have the testables, the 6'5" that everyone looks to, but the guy just knows how to win and compete. And so any of those things that maybe the height that he doesn't have, he sure more than makes up for in the way that he leads the team. His work ethic sets the tone, and then the guy's just a competitor.
Yeah, you know what I loved about him yesterday or on Saturday, depending on when people watch this? He throws an interception.
Yes.
And 90% of the quarterbacks are not going to track that guy down. And that's not a knock on most quarterbacks, but there has to be an element of you're angry and all these things, even though the pick wasn't necessarily his fault.
Hurt.
Yeah, you don't want to get hurt. He goes and makes a textbook tackle on that guy, and that was a safety. This was, the way that he angled in and dropped that guy. And listen, Penn State's defense ends up holding. Kent State gets a field goal. The score's 21-10. That's a big difference from being 21-10 to 21-14. And this is over a player who knows how that game may unfold. I think Penn State's still going to win it, but who knows how it's going to unfold.
Right. Well, they are going to win it. But when you're sorting through a 53-point win, it's hard to pick out a play of the game. But that would have been it, or one of them.
And what message does that send? And that's another one you could address, Justin. When you're a young player on that team and you see the Heisman candidate do that.
He's a football player. Okay, so anytime I played, effort plays like that, whether it was on special teams or guys that were stars, tracking down a guy like that, just kind of the never say quit, because that does, as long as they don't get in the end zone, you have a chance to stop them. And he gave them a chance for that, and I think that the young guy said, boy, if Trace is hustling like that, then I sure better be.
Yeah. Well, a lot of good from yesterday, but coming up next, how can we find bad in a 53-point victory? Well, James Franklin was able to do that, and we spotted a couple things too. We'll tell you what that is next.
The NitWits are brought to you by Irwin Financial, Raymond James, an independent firm and a firm foundation for your financial future. By Coldwell Banker, no one will work harder to sell your home. By Courtesy Motor Sales of Altoona, where courtesy means a great deal. By The Allegro, where fine cuisine is a way of life. By Health South, your rehab choice. Health South Altoona, ask for us by name. By Monarch Cleaners, for all your dry cleaning, uniform, and mat rentals.
You're watching Nittany Nation Overtime.
All right, welcome back to Nittany Nation Overtime. Here with the NitWits guys. They won by 53, but we can still find some fault in there. So, Mark, I ask you, what concerns you most about this team going into Big Ten play?
I don't know that it's an overall concern, but some of the play of the defense early in the game, we were talking a little bit off air. When you have a veteran guy like Windsor jumping offside a couple of times, that you're going to be able to get away with that against Kent State. But when you're playing in the Big Ten, especially when Ohio State comes here in a couple weeks, you have got to get that dialed down. I know they were talking about clap cadences or whatever. You're going to see everything in the Big Ten. We know that Ohio State has used a clap cadence a lot. They have to get that sort of stuff dialed down, and just penalties in general. We were penalized, I think, 9 times.
Right.
Yeah.
3 touchdowns came off the board due to penalties. I think James Franklin said that most of them were decent calls. So those are just some of the things they have to get cleaned up. But that's why you play non-conference games. I mean, it's part of the experience. I wouldn't say that there's any reason for alarm going into Big Ten play.
Yeah, I think, first of all, you had a couple holds. I think the offensive line, they've hey, you put 63 points on it's the most it's the most yards they've had in a game since '95 at Rutgers when McQuarrie went deep at the end.
Nice.
That kept that one where it was. But they've had a couple holds. They had a couple fumbles yesterday, a blindside sack that Penn State recovered. Maybe just some special teams. Yeah, they've been vulnerable to the onside kick, so they have a few things they can work on.
And I haven't been around that much. You guys see a lot more, but I would say that I'm waiting to see who on that defense steps up as the leader. So you're talking about a slow start and sometimes Jason Kabinda and the safety they had
Allen,
last year that
yeah.
was with the Steelers now, there was no question who the leaders were on that. And as I'm just trying to think about who's the leaders on this current defense, I can't pick it out. And so maybe as these weeks go on, someone's going to kind of step up and take that vocal part of it so that the slow starts don't happen.
Well, I think Nick Scott is considered a guy that everybody respects and playing a lot at safety. And Sharif Miller is beginning to come into his own as a defensive end. But I think that's a great point because you knew Marcus Allen was the leader, and then for sure Kabinda.
And here's where you missed John Reed a little bit. I mean, he missed all of last year, but he's a veteran player, and we assume he's banged up. He just didn't quite look right out there a little bit when we saw him very early in the season. It's great to have a guy like Castro Fields who's able to step in and play really well, but he's a true sophomore. Reed's a guy who's been through the battles, and it would be nice to have him back. So hopefully, as time goes on, they're able to work him back in and find a way to, maneuver all of those guys in that secondary. One thing I will say, though, is that, we want to talk about, we're kind of nitpicking here because they scored all these points. There's two ways of looking at it. First of all, they scored all these points, and that's a great win, but in every one of these games so far, they have still left a lot out there. It's like how effective is this offense going to be when they are hitting on all cylinders? And I think that's kind of the positive looking at some of their struggles.
And we talked about on the way down too, the depth of this team is unlike we've seen in a long time, the amount of talent. And then you talk about the receivers, just back to them. Like I watched State High play Friday night, and this kid Keaton Ellis, I think he's still at Penn State.
He's good.
I mean, they're going to have crazy depth.
Well, Keaton is going to be a defensive back, and that's how crazy their depth is because they could bring a kid in like that to play defensive back. But it sure looks like they're going to get Julian Fleming, who's the top receiver in the nation in this upcoming or in the next class. So you're talking about. My point being, the depth of athleticism is just crazy with the amount of people they're bringing in. And late in that game, I mean, you see a pass to Daniel George. Guy's playing for the first time. His first play is the longest reception in Penn State history. It's incredible.
Plus, they have shorter that we haven't seen yet. But the fact that you can play guys and still redshirt them, I think, is factoring into this big mix too, and making their depth, that much more attractive.
The talent there, the depth is there, and so we talk about the penalties and that type of thing. That stuff dials in, and then that cream of the crop, talent-wise, will really, really show.
And one person we haven't seen yet this season, Tommy Stevens, and he's been injured since the end of last year. What can he bring to this offense when he's finally unleashed, when he's finally ready to go?
Well, versatility, unpredictability, because you have a guy that you can do some things with that. Although I'll say Clifford has come in and really represented himself quite nicely. So. You wonder if what the plan is for Stevens. Are they holding him back to Ohio State? Because I don't think it'll be a surprise when he gets into the opponents.
No, I mean, it looked like before the Kent State game, that was the first time he warmed up. He went through the entire warm-up. So clearly he's getting closer and getting closer. The thing about Sean Clifford, though, right now that kid's looking at a quarterback rating of 530 or something. It's like the highest. He's 4 of 4 for 100 however many yards. So as difficult as this has probably been on Tommy Stevens, because he's a kid who's really waiting his turn and really been a team player, the ability to get the redshirt freshman in there and get him some reps has been good. But I think you're going to see Tommy Stevens within the next couple of weeks. It just looks like it's trending in that direction.
And you mentioned nitpicking a little bit, but you had a pretty cooperative opponent there yesterday. When they run for a first down, a quarterback makes a great play, and somebody punches somebody out of bounds and takes your first down away or field position. You run into the kicker after you hold them on the first series. So I don't think you're going to see that. And Pitt completely wilted. Maybe we'll get to that. I know you're a Pittsburgh native.
Love seeing it.
I was glad to see Pitt bounce back.
Yeah, I tell everyone, I'm a Pitt fan. Like, I want Pitt to be strong.
Yeah.
It's good for the state. It's good for high school football. It's good for when these teams have played each other. So I take no satisfaction in Pitt not doing as good as we hope they
I
would.
think you do when you're watching a game and they're struggling against them. You may take a little bit of satisfaction.
Maybe a little bit.
All right, well, coming up, this guy could play some football back in the day. He probably could still play right now, but what's he been up to since he left Happy Valley? We dive into that. We grill Kerpakis next on Nittany Nation Overtime.
The Nitwits are brought to you by Reed and Solaney Orthodontics. Doctors Reed and Solaney provide orthodontics for children and adults. By W.S. Lee & Sons, your local food distributor. Go Penn State. By Allegheny Street Cigar. Allegheny Street Cigar, Blair County's only cigar lounge. By McAleer's Plumbing, specializing in plumbing, heating, and air conditioning, serving our community since 1886. By Shields Awards and The Sports Shop. We have a fantastic selection of awards, apparel, and memorabilia at great prices. By Freedom RV. Get ready to tailgate this Penn State football season with Freedom RV Rentals.
You're watching Nittany Nation Overtime.
All right, welcome back to Nittany Nation Overtime. We're joined by the Nitwits and former Penn State defensive end Justin Kerpakis. So, what have you been up to since you left us here in Happy Valley?
I played 7 years professionally, bounced around a good bit, more than I would have cared to. Steelers, Patriots, Browns, Lions, stint in NFL Europe, and I always say I sure enjoyed it, but I survived more than thrived in the NFL, but sure did have a good time doing it. My wife and I, she's from Philly, I'm from Pittsburgh, we settled in State College as an off-season home, and it turned into a full-season home a little quicker than I would have liked. And started a family, 4 kids, 10-year-old, 8-year-old, 6-year-old, 3-year-old, and so they keep us busy. And I'm a business owner. I own Atlas Physical Therapy. We have 1 location in State College, 1 Altoona currently, and it's a great place that I'd like anyone that has any rehab needs, come see us. AtlasTherapy.com, and we do physical medicine right. I'm sure are proud of the team we've assembled, and so I'm just working and raising kids, and once in a while get to enjoy some Penn State football.
Well, you've always been a great guy to deal with. I remember we covered you as a player, and that extends to tonight. And we appreciate you coming down, Justin, and we wish you well in your ventures.
I appreciate very much.
Yeah.
What's the one memory from Penn State that you will always remember about your time here?
I always have the same answer. It was the first game that I dressed in and came out of the tunnel. And I usually get emotional whenever I talk about it. And so you go on to do other things in life, and that was a small part of your life, but just shows you how much it did mean. It was affirmation that all the people that said you couldn't, that first time running out was affirmation that, hey, I made it, and sure was a special feeling. Wasn't satisfied, wanted to go on and play and everything else, but that first time running out of that tunnel with the uniform on is a special memory.
Yeah, a couple of the cool things about Justin is he actually played against Tom Brady when Brady was at Michigan, and then was on the Patriots with him. And you also played against Drew Brees, in some just unbelievable games at the college level. I mean, that must have been, your memories of those games. Even though the one against Tom Brady was probably difficult, but having played against those guys at multiple levels or with them at multiple levels has to be pretty special to you.
And seeing them still play at a high level. Actually, just today, my 8-year-old daughter said, did you played with Tom Brady, right? We were watching that, and I said, yeah. She goes, well, how come you aren't still playing? I said,
Kids have a way of humbling you.
Yeah.
Hey, Justin, one thing I would like to throw at you is when you look at Penn State's defensive ends today, James Franklin has said he thinks it's their best core that they've had in a while. When you have Sharif Miller,
Since you.
Yeah, Etor, well, and some guy named Courtney Brown was
he was
all
pretty
right,
good too. Yeah, sure.
Etor, obviously we saw Owe yesterday. What are you thinking when you're seeing these kids play?
So I've been to a couple practices and been up close. And these guys are long, lean, and crazy athletic. Their get-offs are superior. I think the world of Coach Spencer. It really reminds me a lot of Coach Larry Johnson that I had, and the way that he continues to develop kids. These guys are off the charts talent-wise. I love watching them.
All right. Well, thank you so much again for joining us, but don't go anywhere. We got one segment left.
You got a pick to make.
Yeah, you got a pick to make. Conference season is here. Illinois, Friday night. What to expect when the Nittany Lions travel to Champaign.
The Nitwits are brought to you by Jethro's, serving ribs, steaks, Italian specialties, and the famous Prospector salad since 1983. Takeouts, delivery, and catering. By Lucky's Beer Distributor. Let Lucky's Beer get you ready for PSU game day. By Remax Results Realty Group. Committed to a culture of professionalism, productivity, and exceptional service. By EasyToUse.com. Your Yellow Pages connection in print and online. By Lions 247 with Fight on State, your online home for Penn State football and recruiting coverage. And by the Altoona Mirror, featuring Penn State Game Day every Friday and Penn State Extra every Sunday.
You're watching Nittany Nation Overtime.
All right, welcome back to Nittany Nation Overtime. It's prediction time. We got to start with our Nitwit of the Week. Mark Brennan, you have you're now tied with Neil. And
I didn't know.
I didn't realize that. Wow, that's pretty cool.
Yeah, you get to go first now.
I get to go first. I thought the Nitwit of the Week goes last, but it doesn't really matter. You guys probably have a good feel for what I'm going to pick anyway. Listen, you're talking about an Illinois team that really struggled with Kent State and barely beat the same team that Penn State just kind of hammered. South Florida went into Soldier Field and was able to get a win over Illinois, put up over 600 yards of offense. I do think the Friday night aspect may take Penn State out of its rhythm just a little bit, but ultimately I look for the Nittany Lions to roll 48-20.
48-20.
Okay, I think the best thing Illinois got going for itself is Lovie Smith's beard at this point. So they're prime time. His beard will get a lot of exposure. Whether they're ready for prime time, I don't know. But, it'll be an opportunity for them out there. Penn State's used to this. I'm going to say Penn State 44, Illinois 13.
Full disclosure, I hate college football on Friday nights. I'm a traditionalist, believes that high school football Friday nights, college football Saturday, pros Sunday, and Monday nights. I think all the things we talked about with Penn State, they get cleaned up, that the offense gets on an official roll here, and they're unstoppable. I'm looking for a blowout, 62-10.
Wow. 62-10.
Yes.
Okay.
Going high.
I haven't seen the line for this week, but
28.
I get nervous when you get a Friday night game under the lights, no matter who the opponent is. And so I think Penn State gets off to a slow start, but then, as you've seen, they are a second-half team. They put the foot on the gas, and they don't let up, with the exception of the App State game, of course. But the last two, they've really shown it. I say Penn State 45, Illinois 17, but don't be surprised for that slow start. And as we wrap up here, Justin, thank you so much for joining us. Peter will be back next week, guys, so you can rag on him for missing this week and whatnot. Hopefully. I don't know. Does my pick count for Pete's pick?
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, the chair.
It's like the two of you are working against us.
Oh, if I had known that, I would have made a better pick then. I was okay.
You would have made a worse pick.
That's true. But yeah, Justin, thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
Mark, Neil, of course, as always. I'm
Good job,
Jack.
Jack.
Peter will be back next week, I promise. But for now, that's going to be Nittany Nation Overtime for this week, and we'll see you next week.
The Nitwits are brought to you by Irwin Financial, Raymond James, an independent firm and a firm foundation for your financial future. By Coldwell Banker, no one will work harder to sell your home. By Courtesy Motor Sales of Altoona, where courtesy means a great deal. By The Allegro, where fine cuisine is a way of life. By Health South, your rehab choice. Health South Altoona, ask for us by name. By Monarch Cleaners, for all your dry cleaning, uniform, and mat rentals. By Reed and Solaney Orthodontics. Doctors Reed and Solaney provide orthodontics for children and adults. By W.S. Lee & Sons, your local food distributor. Go Penn State. By Allegheny Street Cigar. Allegheny Street Cigar, Blair County's only cigar lounge. By McAleer's Plumbing, specializing in plumbing, heating, and air conditioning, serving our community since 1886. By Shields Awards and The Sports Shop. We have a fantastic selection of awards, apparel, and memorabilia at great prices. By Freedom RV. Get ready to tailgate this Penn State football season with Freedom RV Rentals. By Jethro's, serving ribs, steaks, Italian specialties, and the famous Prospector Salad since 1983. Takeouts, delivery, and catering. By Lucky's Beer Distributor. Let Lucky's Beer get you ready for PSU game day. By Remax Results Realty Group, committed to a culture of professionalism, productivity, and exceptional service. By EasyToUse.com, your Yellow Pages connection in print and online. By Lions 247 with Fight on State, your online home for Penn State football and recruiting coverage. And by the Altoona Mirror, featuring Penn State Game Day every Friday and Penn State Extra every Sunday. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next week.